Hey, Tim Frisch with A Frisch Perspective here. I don't know how many of you have heard that Mike Lindell, who is well known for My Pillow, he is also a professing Christian. He was recently on Jimmy Kimmel, and I just really thought it was a really interesting situation where you had very different viewpoints on this television show. So I don't know how many of you have watched the interview. If you haven't watched it, I will leave a link to that interview in this video description so that you can watch it for yourself. If you have watched the interview, I would love to hear what you thought about it. You can leave the comments in the comments section. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'm going to play a little bit of the interview for you here just so you can get a taste of what it was like, and then I'll make some comments.
You did a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
You then got addicted to cocaine and then crack. Mm-hmm. You have a gambling problem. You supported yourself counting cards.
Right.
You smoked more crack. You would go to these casinos. You'd count cards. They'd throw you out. You were arrested multiple times. You had to sell your beloved bar. You started making pillows. You quit smoking crack. You made millions of dollars. And then you fell in love with Donald Trump, and now here we are. Is that correct, basically? Did I miss anything?
Well, you missed one thing.
What did I miss?
On January 16, 2009, by the grace of God, he did free me of all the addictions.
Yes.
And I woke up, I'm looking around, I wasn't into politics. I didn't know anything about what a conservative was, a liberal. I didn't know a filibuster from a millibuster. I didn't know anything.
Some would say you still don't, Mike, to be honest.
Maybe so. I do say wash and not wash. You know?
Yeah, okay. Let's be truthful. And by the way, I have a buzzer here in case, just for the lawyers, in case there's anything that we have to challenge.
Right.
A lot of people didn't want you to come on the show. Yeah. On liberals and conservatives, everybody told me don't have you on the show, and they told you don't go on the show.
Yes, they did. Yeah.
But I think it's important that we talk to each other.
Absolutely.
And I think that...
Yes.
One thing that I really liked about that interview was the comment that Jimmy Kimmel made about how we need to talk. It's good to have conversation. And I definitely agree with that. That's one of the reasons I have this channel. I believe it's really important to have conversation. And I do think one of the reasons we don't have conversation is because it's difficult to have conversation. And if you go and watch the whole interview, you will see that they definitely don't agree in their discussion. And that can make it uncomfortable when we don't agree with people. But at least they're trying to talk about things, and I think it's really interesting to hear Mike Lindell, how he talks to Jimmy Kimmel. And I have to say, Jimmy Kimmel didn't necessarily treat Mike Lindell all that well the whole time. People did comment on that, but he is a comedian, and he does joke around a lot, so that's to be expected. But also, I think it's really good that Jimmy Kimmel had him on the show. He didn't even have to have him on. And as he said, there were really people on both of their sides saying they shouldn't be on that show together. So it was really good that they were willing to engage in that conversation, even though it can be difficult to have conversations when you strongly disagree with someone. But the most interesting thing to me about that whole conversation is actually if you look at the comment section of that video. It's interesting because Mike Lindell was really going into enemy territory by going on that show. And there were even people, I think I read one person who said they really wanted to see Mike Lindell get kind of torn to pieces by Jimmy Kimmel. But what ended up happening is Mike Lindell really won a lot of people over to him. Not necessarily that they agreed with him, but he kind of won them over in the sense that they respected him after this interview. And I think one reason is because he was willing to go into a setting where people disagreed with him. But also, a lot of people commented on the way Mike Lindell carried himself, that even when he was put down or attacked in some way, he really responded in a gracious way. And he just had a really great attitude throughout the whole interview. Even at the end, they kind of teased him at the end, and they brought out a Mike Lindell impersonator. And this is what that looked like.
Oh, no. Stop the presses. You got this guy out there. This is a fraud.
This is not the man.
Oh, my
he
goodness.
needs you got to get this guy some blue shirts. Hold on a second. I'm as comfortable in my pajamas as I am in a bleeding bandage on top of my head, Jimmy.
Yeah.
You got this guy out here. He's claiming to be me. That's an imposter. First, they went for the phones. First, they went for our phones, and now they're sending in clones. Look at him. Look at him. That's not it.
I don't know who to talk to
Don't
now.
worry.
I really don't.
I'm fully vaccinated. I had the liquid polyurethane vaccine. I'm good to go.
Have you tried the oleandrin?
I gargle with echinacea. I'm a good man. The Chinese are so close. There's a Chinese theater across the street. Jimmy.
So as you can see, one of the really good things about this interview that you see with Mike Lindell is that he was willing to laugh at himself. And I think that's a wonderful thing. All of this really brings to my mind what Colossians 4, 5, and 6 says. And this is really for us as Christians, and I think Mike Lindell demonstrated this very well. It says, walk in wisdom toward outsiders, making the best use of the time. Let your speech always be gracious, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how you ought to answer each person. And I think Mike Lindell showed a lot of wisdom in the way that he gave his answers. And a lot of that had to do with his spirit, with the attitude in which he answered the questions, and that he was even willing to laugh at himself. So there's a lot to be learned by Mike Lindell's example going on this show. And again, I don't know that much about Mike Lindell. I don't necessarily agree with everything that he says or believes, but I definitely respect, and I think a lot of other people came to respect him because of the way that he responded and carried himself in this situation. And I think it's an example that a lot of us can learn from. Again, when we are in disagreements with people, the natural thing is to be very defensive and argumentative. But what we see with Mike Lindell is just a very calm approach, actually very jovial approach, willing to laugh at himself, very humble, and then willing to give his evidence, his side of things. So I really think this conversation is a great example of people having a conversation, but also how to carry on a conversation in a gracious way if you are a Christian. I'd love to hear what you think about all of this in the comments below. It's always great to hear your thoughts. Just make sure that you try to keep your comments constructive and helpful to conversation. But thank you so much for listening to some of my thoughts brought to you from A Frisch Perspective.